Welcome back to another edition of the Founder Spotlight. Today I have the CEO and founder of the Hi Collection, Lou Police. How you doing today, Lou? Great. So I'd always like to start with, what brought you to the cannabis beverage industry? And, obviously you have a background working as a first responder, engineer, and many different industries. So what was that initial draw to this industry?
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way. Long-time listener, first-time caller. You did your research. I actually have been involved in a lot of things. I was involved with, I have been a first responder for 25 years, and then kind of a serial entrepreneur, did some things in the automotive, industrial, renewable energy categories. I've been involved in TV, film, and music for almost 15 years, making, projects you've seen on TV and in the theaters, and touring with artists out of Nashville and things like that. The answer to your question is sleep. I tell people sleep's super important. Even when I travel, I say to people, I don't care how we get there, as long as there's a comfortable bed.
Yep.
I need my sleep. And after touring with just incredible world-class musicians, effectively sleeping in a coffin on a tour bus, and working at nights and hours you couldn't sleep. And somebody introduced me to CBD, which is basically a component. It's a cannabinoid from the plant. And all of a sudden I started sleeping better.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to wean myself off of prescriptions and all that other kind of stuff that people use for sleep. It was remarkable for me. And so I wanted to share it with people. So I actually took a hiatus from the entertainment business and started a CBD brand. And then through some mutual friends was introduced to the potential benefits of THC and then, of course, hemp-derived THC pursuant to the Farm Bill. And that's how this all happened, kind of over COVID, too. So even though that was a frustrating time for everybody, it was a great opportunity for me to do some research and really understand the pharmacokinetics and the bioavailability and the potential opportunity and benefits, both for people, for consumers, but then also the business opportunity. And so that's kind of what brought me into it. But interestingly enough, people ask me, did you smoke weed? Did you ever try? I honestly never did. My hand to God, I never smoked marijuana ever in my life. Having been around fires as a first responder for a long time, just the thought of lighting something on fire and breathing it was just not my preference. And then all of a sudden I realized that, hey, you know what? I can get the same effect, the same benefits, generally speaking, with an edible or with a beverage. And it was like, wow, people need to understand this, because I think there's a massive opportunity to reach people on a human level, regardless. I'm thrilled that this is how it happened. The universe has a plan, they tell me. So I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah. Something that is a very common theme among most of the founders I speak to is some sort of health aspect is usually what brings them to the industry, whether that be a chronic illness for them or a loved one, or sleep as well. So that's a very common theme. And then I'm very similar to you. I have smoked, but that's not something I enjoy, which brought me to the beverage category as well. So very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing some research for this conversation, and something that you've mentioned in previous interviews is that you describe Hi Seltzer as a first touch product. Could you explain what that means as you guys see it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would also like to say you're right. And everybody that I've spoken to from all these different brands, and believe it or not, regardless of what everybody would like to think, generally speaking, this is a really fun industry and category to be involved in. The people are super great and want to see others be successful. And I've heard those same stories. As it relates to America's First Touch and the way we've approached this, from a health perspective, we are 0 calories, 0 sugar. There's only 3 ingredients in our product. It's the proprietary nano, water, and then organic flavor, which we're in the process, Lars, of having certified kosher. And so we were very deliberate about that. And then, relative to being a first touch product, our product appeals to, we were like, oh, who's going to be our demographic? And by the way, as a sidebar, I have no CPG experience. You already understand. I wasn't in beverage. I don't know CPG. I often say to people, I use the old adage, don't tell me the odds. I just don't know what I don't know. And, let's go. And, we thought our demo was going to be, soccer moms, 35 to 45, young, athletic, social, and all that kind of stuff. And the reality is, for our product, it's 21 to 91. I know people, God bless them, in their late 80s, early 90s, who drink our product for for them, it's for sleep, even though we wouldn't make a medical claim. Diabetics, can enjoy our product socially, where they otherwise couldn't enjoy, like traditional alcohol because of the sugar. Athletes, I've met tons of athletes. We're working with professional athletes. We have them on our cap table, and they count things called macros. I didn't know what a macro was, dude. I could barely count calories. And they're like, no, this affects my macros. Like, okay. And so even though our demographic is 21-91, we do skew heavy female because of the 0 cal, 0 sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we wanted to be was we wanted to be a brand that, we're only dosed at 5 milligrams a can. And
Yep.
there's been, requests for us to go up to 10, but we have a very specific path and an objective. And right now 5 milligrams is where we want to be. And so what I share with people is a can of Hi Seltzer is very similar to like a glass of wine. And so unfortunately, our product metabolizes very, very quickly in about 5 to 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike something like alcohol or other like edibles that go through first pass metabolism, through your liver, you begin to feel the effects of a high seltzer product within the first, 5 to 7 minutes. And if you know that it's going to taste like or it's going to affect you similarly to like a glass of wine, that's very approachable for people who haven't tried cannabis. And it's been really interesting to meet people on the road and in markets and stuff where like I've never really been into cannabis. That wasn't my thing. And I'm finding that more and more and more. And beverage is such an approachable sort of barrier to entry or approachable, market entry point. Because the first thing you do when you're born is drink something. And in many cases, the last thing you do before you pass away is drink something. And so, a beverage is very simple for people to wrap their minds around. And so that's the way we approach it, very scientific, very, high quality based and very simple and approachable for people. So that's kind of the long-winded answer.
Yeah. The athletes portion, something interesting because that's a big proponent of, or a big section of when I use various beverages. It's not necessarily sparkling beverages. I usually choose one of the ones. I just don't like bubbles in my stomach when I'm working out, but
for sure,
it's definitely something that I do before I go for a run, whether that be something that doesn't have THC, but it has, CBG, CBC, CBD, and other things just from like an inflammation standpoint. Or, sometimes I just want to go for a run. I don't really care about pace or anything. And yeah, those times I'll include some THC in there as well. So
you're one of those guys. I have a friend of mine in Nashville, and he'll do about 50 to 60 migs and go for like a long run and then come back and do another 20 or 30. And he's fully functional. I mean, he's really good guy and works in the business. And he's like, I took 3 of those gummies and went for a 20-mile run. I'm like, if I took 3 of those gummies, I'd be like in orbit for hours.
Yeah, I can't do that high. I'm usually, I think the most I've ever done is 10 before a run.
Yeah.
And it does make for a very enjoyable run, but it is not, if you're trying to set a PR or anything, I would not recommend taking THC. Because I'm definitely not setting any records, but it is, you do just kind of zone out and just lock in.
Nice.
But
I might try that.
Yeah, you should. So last year, you guys locked in a pretty major partnership with Specs down in Texas. Could you kind of walk the audience through how that deal came to be and, what made them the right fit?
Yeah, it's a good question. So again, we led, so our entire company, I won't be redundant, but first of all, our focus is quality. Secondly is education. We have doctors actually on staff. And then, so education for consumers and retailers and distributors. And then of course we get into the reg compliance side of things. And so a friend of a friend introduced the leadership at Specs to our product. I think they were fans of the brand. I'm super excited about how approachable the brand is. I mean, you can see it from 20 feet away. You pretty much know exactly what it is. It's approachable. Anyway, and the 5 milligrams, and we were Delta 8 at the time. And we were probably 6 to 8 months ahead of most of the other brands because we were Delta 8, hemp-derived Delta 8. We've always had a D9 formulation. D8 pursuant to the Farm Bill was federally legal. And so we got out early. And I will give credit where credit is due. The Ridman family and the leadership at Specs, they invited us down and they were like, this is great. And we like it. We enjoy it. I know they drink it. In fact, as I wasn't there, Lars, but as the story goes, and for anybody who's listening that wants to try to, get their product into Specs, be advised, they never drink the products cold. They always invite everybody in and basically do like a big round table and stuff like that. It's always room temperature and a lot of people in the room. And they basically told us that, we did the same thing we do with everybody. And it was unanimous. Said every single person's hand went up in the room that said, this is something we want to get into. And again, to their credit, they were way ahead of the game relative to, getting involved in the cannabis space, the THC infused space. And so we did our agreement with Specs. It's been going great. All 256 stores. One of my associates has been to every single store. which is something I was told that no one has ever done ever in the history of not just the category, but in their company history, no one's ever gone to every single store. And again, I think that's the personal touch that we put on things. We did that with ABC in Florida. Just recently, I went and drove almost 3,000 miles in the state of Florida, in your home state, because I want to meet people. I want the feedback, and the Total Wine stores and all the others. And so yeah, Specs was great. It got a lot of press, and then people started calling, and so then that's how we started opening doors and going in. We approach this. You'll probably ask about our market segmentation, but we're about 80-20, DTC 20%, and traditional distribution, state by state, is about 80% of our business. And I think that served us well. We did that deliberately. We wanted to go and meet people and have our product, people be able to go into stores and put their hands on the product. And Specs was the first olive out of the jar, if you will.
Yeah, I believe in the press release that went out for that partnership, you mentioned you want to keep the brand grounded as you grow. Are there specific things you've put in place to keep the soul of the brand intact while you scale operations?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's exciting for me to share. I tell people I had the opportunity, the pleasure of doing a different interview earlier this week. And I shared with a person, like, for example, when I came to Florida, and by the way, next time I'll definitely warn you, so you can make yourself scarce. But I don't carry business cards. I don't have an entourage. I drove myself, and I need that human interaction. I need that feedback. And so the answer to your question is, at our company, it's never about I and me. It's always our and we. Our problems, our challenges, our successes. We celebrate each other. We empower each other. Again, I think that goes back to my first responder background, and the fact that it's a team effort. And a lot of people talk about that, and hopefully they do it. It's mandatory here. It's one of those things where, I'm a big proponent of giving people the latitude and the resources they need to go be successful. Relative to being grounded, I try to lead by example in that regard. I mean, doing podcasts and doing, big press, and, we've been humbled and able to secure some recent awards. And at the end of the day, this goes back to a team effort. It's a great product, incredible people, working hard, focused on a goal, and engaging with the consumer. And I think that just, lends itself to just requiring everybody to here at our company, I insist that people are humble and patient and grateful. But be grateful for the opportunity. Be patient, with what's happening. Regulatory compliance, great example. It's okay. It's going to come around. And then be humble. It's not about me. I happen to be the person that gets the opportunity to talk to people like you and tell these stories. But at the end of the day, I'm just a brick in the wall. I couldn't do what we do without the entire group of people: marketing, operations, finance, our regulatory people, our quality teams, sales. It really is a team effort. And when you're a part of something like that corporate culture, it's really, really fun, Lars. Really fun.
Yeah, you said something a little bit ago around the brand stands out. You can see it from a while distance away, and I believe that you designed the logo yourself the night before your first production run.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was going through your head in that moment?
Panic and Five Finger Death Punch. So big shout out to the Five Finger Death Punch guys. But yeah, Lars, our first run was 10,000 cans. We've been running in silver cans forever, for a while, just trying to get the product out there and sampling it and testing it. And we've been working on the branding for a couple, 3 months and employing some artists. And I was kind of keen on the stuff that we did. One day I have a time capsule for any new entrepreneurs or any new business owners. Do that. Start a time capsule. I have one of everything we've ever done: every t-shirt, every ball cap, every line card, every poster, every render, every can. It's really fun to go back and go, gosh, we thought that was cool. Okay. And so we were literally 24 hours away from pushing the button on the artwork. And somebody who I hold in very high regard walked in, and I was like, hey, look, we're getting ready to go to, first 10,000 cans. And he looked at it and he goes, oh my God, that's awful. What is that? And I was like, are you joking? Are you really? And he goes, dude, this is awful. I love your brand. You guys are great. This is absolute garbage. He goes, you got to do better. He said, I'm sorry. He goes, if I was your friend and I didn't tell you, this is terrible. And he walked away, and I just sat there like stunned, in silence, alone. And I'm like, okay. So I put my headphones on, I put the 5-finger death punch in so I could drown out all the chaos in my head, and went to work. And that's how the brand was actually sort of derived. So yeah, I'm surprised you found that. I don't remember telling that story very recently, but it's fun to go back and look at, and again, I say this all the time. Even a broke clock gets it right twice a day. And that day we got lucky. So, but I will one day show you what the OG brand was going to look like. As a compliment to my friend, he was right. It was bad.
So there's a lot of lessons in there, and I kind of have like two follow-up questions.
Sure.
And they can kind of build on each other here. So, how did that, last minute decision kind of shape the brand's tone, and if it did, what in a bigger way than you expected? And then, and kind of in the same line there, did that, scrappy DIY spirit, has that carried over into other parts of the business as you've continued to scale?
Yeah, excellent questions. So one of the things that people in my very small orbit have been gracious enough to tell me and remind me of is, I've been through a lot, and they're like, you got to follow your instincts, right? And at some point you get to the time in your career where you begin to trust your instincts. And I love collaboration. I mean, everything I've told you I've done involves teams, whether it's the first responder stuff or the things that I did in the music and TV space. I like the collaboration, but the reality is every now and again, you have to go with your instinct. And my role as the chief everything officer is to sort of fall back on my instincts. And so, yeah, the change in the brand actually turned out great. I've been in rooms I have no business being in with heads of industry, especially in the Bev CPG space, paying me compliments or paying our brand compliments about how simplistic and approachable the brand is. And I could rattle off names. It's everybody you've heard of in the space, and that's incredible. And I honestly, genuinely forget that I was, the guy at the table with the earphones in that did it. But I'm like, thank you. Because ultimately, Lars, if there's an exit, or if this product winds up in big box and grocery and all those types of things, you want to look back and reflect on and go, I had a small part to play in something like that worked out well. And so the double entendre with Hi, reference the category, the bubbles, that was simple. There's the 10-foot rule in marketing. Do you know what it is from 10 feet away? I think ours easily from 20 feet away if you have good eyesight. You know exactly what it is. And we try to stay real clean with the flavoring and the color palette and all those types of things. And even the edibles follow the same sort of tone. And then reference your other question. Yeah. So when it comes to being instinctual and looking at things and trying to make a pragmatic decision, but also, be inventive and be disruptive and not follow the trend. I had a call earlier today and somebody said, well, everybody else is doing it this way. Honestly, I said to him, well, then we're going to do the other. If that's what everybody else is doing, we're going a different direction. We're going to make a hard left. And then they look at you, kind of like, wait, why? Like, because I don't want to follow trends. I want to set trends.
Kind of like Robert Frost there, take the road less traveled.
Yeah. And again, it's not an ego thing. It's that I know what our team is capable of doing. And so, don't tell me the odds.
So again, there's been a theme throughout this conversation here. You've mentioned teamwork, you've mentioned collaboration, being grounded, being humble, and that kind of comes back to a sense of community. So with Hi, you guys have a roundup program, and I believe you also have a 501c3 initiative as well. One, can you explain to the audience what both of those programs are, and then what's led to building those into the mission of the brand?
Yeah, great questions, and thank you. So about my first responder background, and I've done everything from I've done everything from high angle rescue to swift water, fly airplanes. I'm a pilot, so I fly airplanes and do rescue. I'm firefighter, EMT, the whole 9 yards. I've seen human trauma. Okay, and the people who are involved in a first responder capacity, whether you're a firefighter, EMT, police officer, there's so many different capacities. I have a big affinity and I have a heart for these people because this is what they do every day. And I know I think generally speaking, the entire country, is sensitive to those sacrifices. What I haven't talked about very much is what I do with the military, which we won't go into all the details, but I spent a lot of time working with special operations in another capacity. I have a lot of friends who are former operators, people you've heard of. And the story that I tell, I'll do my best to keep it quick, is when we were doing the silver cans, one of the guys that was working at the co-packing operation at the time, I won't mention his name, but he's a force recon guy. He's a massive human, okay? I mean, my brother's a big boy. This guy is a massive human. he's a force to be reckoned with. I couldn't imagine being in a theater of war and seeing this person on the other side of the line. He's huge, but it's such a sweetheart. He's blown up twice in Iraq. Thank God he didn't lose any limbs, right? The problem is the demons that you bring back, okay? All the stuff that comes back in your mind. And again, I have a lot of friends in the first responder community, a lot of friends who are former operators and special operations. They all come back with this, okay? I don't care how cool you are and how you carry yourself on social media or in a press scenario. The reality is when all the lights go out, you're left alone with the thoughts in your head. I deal with that too, just not as not on such a level. And so we shared our product with this guy, and we gave him a bunch of cases. And he came back. I saw him like 3 weeks after we were done. This was 2 or 3 years ago. And now imagine the biggest person you've ever met in your life, okay? And he's approaching you in a very aggressive manner. I know we're friends. There's no issue. And he grabs me, and he's hugging me, and you can feel the emotion, right? You can feel 170-pound monster. And he said to me, he said, "You saved my life." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I was going to go off into the woods and shut the lights off last weekend." And he's got a family and a wife, and all that stuff. And he said, "I started drinking the samples you gave me." He said, "I started sleeping. I go to my daughter's soccer game this weekend." He said, I'm starting to get my life back." I can't even explain to you just the feeling, the emotion of something like that. And so immediately, I in that room, I know exactly where I was standing, Lars. And I said to some people, I said, "We start a foundation tomorrow, and the goal is going to be to give away 1 million cans a year of Hi Seltzer to first responders and veterans. Obviously, after they're out, they're not going to be drug tested and all that kind of stuff." And then I started sharing the product, Lars, with all my friends in the operations community, and getting the same response. And it's been really, really remarkable. So at some point in the future, you're going to hear about our foundation, and you're going to hear about these partnerships and these collaborations. And I'm really excited. And I even said to somebody, a massive publication recently, that asked me the same question: if my legacy only is what we do with the foundation and the things that we do to help these first responders, these veterans who are coming back with this PTSD and the sleeplessness, and if we just can, help just even remotely, minusculely, with regard to the suicide pandemic, and the brand falls off, I don't care. Just don't care. I love this brand. I'm married to this brand. I live in every day, 7 days a week, 24/7, 365, this brand. But if my legacy becomes that foundation and helping all these people find another alternative versus alcohol, prescriptions, God forbid suicide, dude, that's a win. So that's
Powerful.
what we're doing. Yeah.
I don't have, any of that kind of like trauma or anything like that. But it's definitely something that I hear frequently, people that have, whether it be struggling with addiction, PTSD, whatever, these beverages help with that a lot. I wasn't addicted or anything, but I stopped drinking as well from these products, and it was not intentional whatsoever. I just don't like mixing, and realized it'd been 3 months, and I was like, there's no reason to go back. I didn't miss it. So similar thing, but, a little less powerful, but these.
Listen, man, everybody's got a journey, right? I mean, if that's part of your journey, it should be celebrated. I mean, that's great. Good for you.
But yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing those stories of these products helping, and I wish the people regulating these products could hear more of these stories as well.
Well, and here's what I would tell you, and thank you. What you just said right there, if nothing else resonates with your viewership and your audience, it should be that this message needs to be carried to the legislatures. The lawmakers need to understand. I was in a meeting recently, Lars, and we were talking about hemp-derived THC products, just in general, gummies and drinks and stuff. And they're like, "Well, I don't do, I don't take CBD." And I'm like, wait, what? And I don't have anxiety, and I don't have sleep issues. I don't take CBD. You're talking about apples and oranges, And so there was education is huge. Maybe at some point during this conversation, I can share with you how we're approaching education. But your listeners, your associates, people in my space, in my industry, my colleagues, and my friendly competitors, we need to keep articulating that this is safe. This is a product that's been proven safe, which is why medicinal is available, in 37 states at this point. Of course, this is a product and this natural resource has so many potential benefits, from automotive to textile to medicinal to just all these different things. And I think that that education initiative needs to be comprehensive, and it needs to continue. So you're 1,000% right.
That kind of leads into the next question here, to a certain degree. So, as you mentioned, you worked as a first responder. You are a parent. Those are two roles where cannabis use still carries quite a bit of stigma. How do you navigate that? And then let's go ahead and bring the education component into that. And how are you guys, educating people to hopefully reduce that stigma as well?
Yeah. So real quick, I'll touch on my girls. I'm a proud dad, 2 girls in college. I can't believe that, by the way. And you know what I'm hearing from them? I actually shared this with somebody this morning, that going out and getting blackout drunk isn't cool.
Yeah.
We've seen the statistics about the different generations and the alcohol consumption by generation. I mean, even excluding what the Surgeon General did back in the fall, and the potential links, ties of alcohol to cancer. Now, let me say this. Our brand is not anti-alcohol. Our grandparents and our parents used to say to all of us, everything in moderation. I think that's true. I'm not here to replace booze. If that's, maybe I'm your Monday through Thursday, and Friday, Saturday, you turn it up a little bit. Cool. But we're not here to replace traditional alcohol. However, there's a generational shift that's occurring, and people are seeking alternative social products as adults. And I'm seeing it now starting as young as my girls in college, which is their friends are not keen on going out and getting blackout drunk. Maybe it's the hangover, what do they call it? The Sunday scaries. Maybe it's the weight gain. Maybe it's the dehydration. Maybe it's the effects of on your skin, whatever. You quit drinking. Good for you. I would venture a guess that you don't miss any of that stuff. And so if that's the case, and generationally it's starting to garner more popularity as these NA beverages, THC infused beverages, mushroom infused beverages, and things like that are functional. I think the inevitability is going to be that you're just going to see consumer demand drive the market. And so to that end, when you talk about first responders, you talk about people who are potentially subjected to drug screens, we are very forthcoming about that stuff. No, I mean, it is what it is right now. There's a big automotive manufacturing facility close to where I live. If you have a prescription for an opiate, you can drive a forklift, on the line. But if you test positive for hemp-derived THC because you're consuming a little high seltzer, maybe a high gummy or whatever, you're immediately terminated.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, I take exception to that. And if invited to speak, to the leadership, I would share all the statistics that reinforce that position. I think eventually the pendulum will continue to shift. I think legislators and insurance companies and CEOs and all that stuff, they're going to realize that there is an opportunity to give people an option for, things like THC infused or mushrooms and stuff like that, and different other botanicals. As it relates to our education, when we started the company, I told you we were focused on quality. The second pillar of our company, the second focus for us is education, retail education, consumer education, distributor, wholesale education, legislative education, going in and speaking to people and saying, look, I get it. This has been prohibited for decades. Let us explain to you in very simple terms why it's safe, what the expectation could be, what the pharmacokinetics, what the research indicates. For our brand, like I told you, 1 can's like a glass of wine, so very approachable. And then let's start setting up, education components. We have something that we refer to as high school. Get it? HI school, high school. I didn't come up with that one, but I mean, the ideas are endless, Yep. And so the high school platform involves a mandatory training for everybody that works for our company. You have to go through high school. It's a curriculum. It takes a couple hours. We have, like I told you, we have doctors on staff. We follow all the most recent science. There's things about our brand, things about what to say, what not to say. You can't tell people it's going to make them younger or cure disease. You can't absolutely tell them that our product will improve their dance moves, because it will. I can prove that. I can substantiate that. And then we meet with our distributors and we take them through high school. And then we meet with our retailers. We take them through high school. We have a new platform that's rolling out this summer where every retailer that is with us has the opportunity for free to send their associates through a digital online version of high school, because you need to understand what this is. Can I mix it with prescriptions? Can I include alcohol? What would be the potential outcome? What's the recommended dosage? Where should I start? I've never tried cannabis before. Should I start at a 30 milligram product? Maybe not. And help people understand, because when you educate, an informed consumer is the best consumer, because they're making decisions commensurate with the information that they have. And then they're going to choose the brand that's right for them. And so we're leading with education. We're going hard on education. And I think that applies pretty much everywhere. If you understand something, then you're way more comfortable trying it potentially, and I think that just benefits everyone. So that.
I love all that. Is high school available to the mass public at this point, or is that something you get planned to
Pretty
roll out?
soon.
There you
Pretty
go.
soon. Actually, we're launching the prototype. What do you call it? The pilot prototype at an event in Florida this week. And there's deliverables. And then, yes, at some point, the online digital version of high school will be available. Right now, our social media is doing like this ABCs of THC. We really, honestly, genuinely, and you know, I use the term authenticity. I want people to understand that we're authentic about this. We want you to understand. You don't have to go with our brand if that's not your thing. If you like a little bit of sugar, or if you like a higher concentration, there's some really great brands. But at least you understand exactly what the expectation is. You know, how am I going to feel? How's it going to interact with my body? What's the bioavailability like? You know, just all those different types of things, and who should do it, and who should think twice. Talk to a physician always if you have questions. And I want to be a trusted resource for people. And if our brand can continue to do that and lead by example, I think that can only, help everybody.
Absolutely. So a final question here. How can people support Hi?
So my personal Venmo, actually, I've been kicked off Venmo. I've been kicked off Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, or WhatsApp. I've been kicked off all of them. It's true. People make fun of me. They're like, can I Venmo you? I'm like, no, I'm banned for life. Why? Well, apparently I'm a drug dealer. Anyway, so, you go to hiseltzers.com. You can follow us on social media. If we have a brand new website, which I have permission to tell you that'll be launching in just a couple of weeks.
Awesome.
The brand isn't changing. We're not doing a brand refresh, just a really rad, high speed, super, super fun, engaging website. But hiseltzers.com, the social medias, you can find it in your local retailers, Total Wine, ABC, Specs, and all that kind of stuff. And, LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. If somebody has questions, they want to reach out. I want to be an approachable person. I'm just another person, and if people have questions or they want to reach out to our brand, we have dedicated customer service people. They're not AI bots. They're actual human beings, and they'll answer your questions. They'll pick up the phone and talk to you. I'm old school, man. And I just think that human interaction is really, really important. And so we want to earn people's trust.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lou. And until next time, guys, cheers.